Shalom, Izzy here with Holy Language Institute at holylanguage.com. And yes, I do have my famous Hebrew letters coffee cup here, and yes, I have some good coffee in it. I wanted to talk with you today about a Hebrew word, a mysterious Hebrew word. Here is a Hebrew text of Genesis chapter 49. So this is the Bible that Rabbi Jesus of Nazareth read, the original text of the Torah. And in Genesis 49, Jacob is blessing his sons, and he's also like giving these prophecies about not only their futures as individuals, but the tribes that would come from them. It's a really, really fascinating chapter. And in there, when he's talking about Judah and the future of like the tribe that would come from Judah, he talks about the Messiah, and he uses this word for the Messiah. The word right here, you can see it right here. It's Shiloh. That's how people usually say it in English. Shiloh. Now, Shiloh means different things to different people. If you are Israeli and you live in the land of Israel, then Shiloh probably means this place to you. In the Shomron, in Samaria, which is often referred to as the West Bank by the media today, the West Bank of the country of Jordan, even though, it's not Jordan. But anyways, it's there's this place, there's an actual town called Shiloh, or Shiloh, as we say in Hebrew, and it's right next door to the ancient biblical site of Shiloh, where the Mishkan, the tabernacle, stood. So this is one picture of this area, and I've actually been here, and I actually hitchhiked out of here, down this very road. So yeah, hitchhiking in the West Bank. Not sure if everyone's done that, but that's here's a closer up picture of Shiloh, the actual town. It's a very beautiful little place. Like I said, I've been there. And then here's a view. I think this would be from the town, and you can see down at where they believed that the tabernacle, the Mishkan, was. And there's a summit of a little hill and whatnot. Okay, so so if you mention Shiloh to an Israeli, most Israelis will probably think of this place. If you mention Shiloh to most kids or people who were kids in the last 20 years, they might think of this. There's a movie about Shiloh the Beagle. But if you are talking about Shiloh with someone who really studies the Bible or, is familiar with the Hebrew language, then it's probable that they will think of this prophecy about the coming of the Mashiach. Mashiach is like the Hebrew word for the anointed one. It's where we get the English word Messiah from. And usually a Mashiach in Hebrew was a king. The king was he was Mashacht. He was anointed to be the king. So like Saul, for instance, the first king of Israel, he was actually referred to as God's Mashiach, God's anointed one, like the anointed king. And then David was also referred to as that. So it's really interesting that Saul was actually called a Messiah. I'm not saying he was the Messiah, but in the Hebrew scriptures, he's actually referred to as a Messiah. And so, of course, was David and the other anointed kings. Sometimes also the priests, like the high priest, he was anointed to be the priest, so he was referred to as the Mashiach also, the Cohen HaMashiach, like the anointed Cohen, the anointed priest. So anyways, this is a prophecy about the coming of the Mashiach, the ultimate Messiah. And I thought it would be interesting to look at this word with you and to show you what it actually means. So check this out. Let's look at this. Let's look at this verse in eSword. So we have Genesis chapter 49 here, verse 10. In the previous verse, a couple of verses, he's talking about Judah, his son, and then he goes on to say, "The scepter shall not depart from Judah, nor the ruler's staff from between his feet, until Shiloh comes, and to him shall be the obedience of the peoples." Now, as you know, probably, Yeshua of Nazareth, his adopted father was Joseph, and he was from the tribe of Judah. So Yeshua was regarded as being from the tribe of Judah. And of course, Judah is this guy that is being prophesied about here. And so it says something really interesting. It talks about Shiloh, and then I'm not going to get into this here, but the word here for obedience is really interesting too, because it has the sense of who or what you gather yourself to, or focus on, or hope in, or place your expectations on, and really that's what or who you will obey. So there's a huge teaching there too. We're not going to get into that right now, except to say that that is a reference to the Messiah. The Messiah is the one that the nations would hope in. The Messiah is the one that they would gather themselves to, that he would be like a rallying point, and he would be their expectation, and then therefore he would also be the one that they obey. That's kind of the idea there. So let's look at this Hebrew word for Shiloh. Now, this is eSword. I'm not sure if you're familiar with it. It's a fantastic Bible software. It's free. I'll show you something here that might be useful for you in your own studies. Right, so I have all my favorite translations loaded up at the top here. Okay, I admit they're not all my favorites, but I use them as references. Okay, so this is the New American Standard, and then there's also NASB Plus. What does that mean? With the Strong's numbers. You have to pay for that one, but you can get the King James and then the King James Version Plus with the strong numbers for free. So check this out. We're going to hit the Plus version here, and then we're going to look at this word Shiloh. Okay, there it is. So we're going to mouse over that, and you can see here it gives the Strong's number. So the Strong's number is H, that stands for Hebrew, 7886. And then check this out. Okay, interestingly enough, it says total occurrences 1. So this is the only place in the Hebrew Bible where this word is used. And because of that, there's some question about what it means. I mean, if it's only used once, then you can't look at other places where it's used to get a better sense of the context. But what can you do? You can look at the verb that this noun comes from. Because in Hebrew, everything comes from a verb. And so if you're not sure what a word means, you can look at what the verb is behind it, and that'll give you a better sense. And sure enough, we see that there is a verb there. It's Strong's number 7951. So we're going to go there in 1 second. But firstly, I'm going to show you another feature of eSword. All right. So now you know how to look up a word in its Strong's number in eSword. There's also this nifty little feature here called compare. So you load up a verse, you hit compare, and it'll show you how the verse is translated in the different versions that you have loaded. So we're going to look at this example of Shiloh here. And as you can see, in most versions, it's simply transliterated as Shiloh from the Hebrew. Okay, so for instance, Jewish Publication Society, Shiloh, King James Version, Shiloh. There are a couple variations, like ESV tries to translate that word as tribute, and then that's also the case in the NRSV. But other than that, generally speaking, you have to have the sense of Shiloh. Tree of Life version does have until he to whom it belongs will come. The reason for that particular rendering is Shiloh. Sometimes if you say Shiloh, it means like whose it is. Except that my understanding is that's actually spelled slightly different, and that comes from slightly more modern Hebrew. So anyways, as you can see, this is a variant translation. There's like there is the NLT here, which is more of a paraphrase, so that they have that same sense there also, but I wouldn't necessarily put all of my eggs in a paraphrase basket. Like if you're really studying the Bible, for instance, you don't just read the Message paraphrase. Anyways, so now you have a bit of a sense here. The big idea there is just to get an overview of how this word is handled by the translators. And as you can see, there is a bit of a diversity of opinion on this. So let's look at the actual word in the Hebrew and look at the verb that it comes from and see what we can discover. So once again, we see here that it comes from the verb 7951. So what we're going to do is we're going to hit Control S, and we're going to bring up the search function in Strong's. Control S, and we're going to Hebrew 7951, and it's going to show us where that verb is used. All right, so Shiloh, a title of the Messiah, comes from the verb shalah. And the primary way, this is where this verb is used in Scripture, and this is how it's translated in the New American Standard. Now you'll see here that the primary translation is prosper. Prosper, prosper, prosper. Now, there is a specific sense here of prosperity. It's prospering in the sense of being at ease. You can see that here, at ease, and then also at ease. So let's talk about that for a moment, and then we're going to look at another word that comes from this verb. Shiloh comes from this verb, and there is another word that comes from this verb that's going to help us to understand this title of the Mashiach better. Okay, so just take note of this firstly. Shiloh means someone who is prospering. someone who is at ease. So what does that tell you about Yeshua of Nazareth? You think about his life, when he was with his father in the beginning, even before they created the world. Yeshua was prospering with his father, enjoying that fellowship together. And then what did they do? They created the world. And that was an expression of prosperity. The creation of the world was this phenomenal artistic expression of the prosperity that the Father and the Son enjoyed with each other. It was an overflow of prosperity. This beautiful universe that we live in. Okay, and then remember also it has the sense of being at ease. So there is shalom in heaven. There was shalom between Yeshua and his Father from forever ago. Yeshua was born, and he grew up as a ben shalom. He grew up as a son of peace. That's how we'd say it in Hebrew, like a man of peace. And you even see that throughout the course of his ministry when he finally went public. He brought shalom to people. He healed them of their physical sicknesses and infirmities. If they had mental diseases or they were oppressed by demonic spirits, he would set them free. He would bring shalom to their bodies, shalom to their minds and hearts. And so you can see how Yeshua was a person who was at ease in that regard, and how he brought shalom to individuals and to the nation of Israel. So we see that. Of course, Yeshua went through a couple days there during his sufferings on behalf of humanity and his death for every one of us, where he definitely was not at ease at all, and his prosperity was stripped from him. But then that was restored when he was brought back to life, when he was raised from the dead, and when he ascended to his Father, and he once again returned to a state of prosperity. And Yeshua is coming back as the King of the world, the leader of the nations, and of the nation of Israel. And of course, there are many prophecies describing when Mashiach comes. For instance, the last 8 chapters of the book of Ezekiel describe Messiah as the prince in the restored land of Israel, with the rebuilt temple and the tribes of Israel reinstated in the land. There are many prophecies like that. But the big idea there is that Yeshua is going to be the king of Israel and lead the nations of the world, and he is going to live in unprecedented prosperity, and he's going to lead the world in an era of unprecedented prosperity also. And it will be a time of great ease. The nations will live in shalom with each other, and each of us will, for those of us who live during that time, who are blessed to live during that time, whether we just make it through to that time, or whether we're raised from the dead into that time, it's going to be a time of shalom, of inner shalom also, of wholeness and healing and completion in that regard. The Hebrew word shalom, that's the sense of it, like wholeness and healing and completion. Right? So that's this title of the Messiah, Shiloh. Already, are you getting the sense of what it means? Like, it's a very big word. It's a loaded word, and it describes Yeshua of Nazareth in this regard. So really, just this title of the Messiah, it preaches the gospel. Like, it tells you so much about the good news, about who Yeshua is, and what he came to bring the world, and what he's coming to bring the world. Now, I want to show you, just as a side note, there's a warning here also, just in terms of a practical life lesson. So it talks about prospering, it talks about being at ease, and then there are places in Scripture where it has another sense. It has the sense of being negligent. It has the sense of even being deceived. So remember that, because we're going to look at a noun that comes from this verb that reinforces this scary warning. Now check this out. I want to show you one specific verse. Psalm 122. Pray for the peace of Jerusalem. May they what? May they shalav. May they prosper who love you. So this tells us that the Messiah loves Jerusalem. And he was a person who prayed for the peace of Jerusalem. He even wept over Jerusalem. Remember when he came to it riding on the donkey? May they prosper who love you. All right. Now, I want to show you something here in the Psalms. In the next verse, okay, so the verb is used here for prosper. In the next verse, we get a noun from this verb, and it helps us to even better understand this title. So let's look at that together. Psalm 122. So it says here, may they prosper who love you. May peace be within your walls. There's shalom. May shalom be within your walls, and prosperity within your palaces. Guess what the Hebrew word there is for prosperity? It's shalva. And it comes from that verb shalah, which means to be prosperous and at ease, from which we get this title for the Messiah, Shiloh, or Shiloh, right? So let's right-click. Now, if you want to see how a word is used throughout Scripture and how it's translated, this is what you do in eSword. You right-click on the word, you do a quick search, and it's going to show you where else that word is used and how it's translated. All right. So these are the places where it's used. It's not used that many times. Prosperity. You can see here there are several other places where it has the sense of prosperity or being at ease. Time of tranquility. In the book of Daniel, it has that sense. But look, there's another sense. It can also have the sense of complacency. Okay, here it says quietness also, which is really fascinating, because that tells us something about the Messiah. Remember Yeshua? Yeshua was a quiet man. People talk about being more extroverted or introverted. It looks like Yeshua may have actually been an introvert. Like sometimes, there were big crowds that would follow him around, and he really loved them, and he would do everything he could to like help them and teach them and heal them and feed them. But then he would run away. Like seriously, he would go and hide. He would go and just have like quiet time. Like that's the kind of thing an introvert does. You know what I mean? So, anyways, I think that's really fascinating that Yeshua, he was a man of peace, and he was also a quiet man. And we'll see here this warning, though. That was a side note. Let's look at this warning. Okay, it talks about complacency. This is also quite scary. It talks about one of the bad guys of history in the book of Daniel, in the prophecy, and it talks about what? He will destroy many while they are what? At ease. It says, he will come in a time of tranquility and seize the kingdom by intrigue. In a time of tranquility, he will enter the richest parts of the realm. And he'll do some bad stuff, right? So there's a warning here for us. The warning is, when you are experiencing prosperity in your life, maybe physically, when you just, you paid off your bills and maybe you're out of debt and, you feel like you're set for life and you can just maybe kick back and enjoy the good life a little bit, you're prospering, that's a very dangerous time for you. Or even if you're just experiencing a wonderful honeymoon season with God, and you're experiencing like a summer season of the soul, so to speak. You're prospering inwardly. That's wonderful, Mazel Tov. But at the same time, you need to be aware that there is a danger to that. Physical prosperity has a dangerous side. The prosperity of the spirit and of the soul, it has a danger. The danger is that you'll become at ease too much. Maybe you'll get too relaxed. You'll actually become negligent, or you'll become lazy. You'll become complacent. That's the scary thing. It's easy for that to happen. So there's a warning there for us. When we are enjoying times of prosperity, don't let your guard down. Don't become lazy. Stay diligent. Keep working hard. Maybe not for yourself, because maybe you don't need to, but for the good of those around you and for the benefit of the world. That's a warning that we get from this Hebrew word, from which we also get this title of the Messiah. So it talks about this time of tranquility, and that's when like the bad guy takes over the place and evil runs rampant. And this is very true not just for us as individuals, but for countries also. We even see that in the history of the modern state of Israel. And the Yom Kippur War. Israel was enjoying something of a time of prosperity, a time of tranquility, and then there was a surprise attack, and it was a disaster. So there's a warning there, not just for us as individuals, but for us as faith communities and as societies. So that is this prophecy of the Mashiach in Genesis chapter 49. Now you have a better sense of what this title of Messiah means, Shiloh. Hopefully you learned something new here. Hopefully this gave you a better understanding of Yeshua of Nazareth and his mission. Hopefully it helped you to get a greater vision of his greatness and his coming glory and the prosperity of the age that he will usher in at the time of his return. And just so you know also, this was actually a takeaway from a lesson that I filmed today. I'm doing this series called Hebrew Verses, where we just read through a chapter of the Bible in Hebrew, word by word. And as we go, I explained some of these words. So we already talked about Shiloh in the lesson, but there were quite a few other things we talked about. We talked about Jacob prophesying over his sons and how we as parents can speak into the lives of our children, and also just those of us who are teachers in any regard or who have people under our spiritual care, how we can speak into their lives and we can bless them for the future. We talked about this concept of, to him shall be the obedience of the peoples. That's a very loaded expression. And it really helps us to understand some things in terms of human behaviors, and also like ultimately who or what we obey, because if all of us are obeying something or someone, it really helps us to understand, for instance, the behaviors of communistic countries in history, a bunch of things. Anyways, we covered a ton of stuff. I would love to have you come and learning with us in a deeper way. Check us out. Our website's holylanguage.com, and we're focused on discipleship to Yeshua of Nazareth, following him because that was the original call, and coming closer to him through studying the Hebrew language, learning about the original Jewish context of the Bible. And we're not just a bunch of like individuals out there learning from a website. We're a community. I like to call us a tribe of people all around the world following Yeshua together, learning together, and showing each other support and becoming friends. So check us out at holylanguage.com, and like I said, you're more than welcome to become a member and learn with us. We have new lessons every week, and we also have several ongoing series and courses that you can check out. But either way, I'm glad I could share this Hebrew word with you and give you this takeaway from the lesson. And be blessed with shalom.